मंजिलें क्या हैं, रास्ता क्या है? मंजिलें क्या हैं, रास्ता क्या है? हौसला अगर हो तो फासला क्या है? Hello everyone, I'm Soumya Vajpayee and you're watching HT City. It's not every day that you get to interact with somebody who is not only a very dedicated artist, but has also put India on a global map. He kept it very low-key for quite some time until his work forced India and people across the world to kind of stand up and take notice. He's earned some really precious laurels for India, with the most celebrated ones being 3 Grammy Awards. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Ricky Kej. Ricky, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So as I just mentioned, that I really don't have any flow for this interview. I was spoiled for choice as far as questions were concerned, but we'll just keep it going very like how our bond has been.
Yeah.
Ricky, I have been chasing you for this interview, I think, for almost a year. The reason for that is that, you have just suddenly become so big in the scene because you have been doing such phenomenal work for so many years. But suddenly, over the last 3 years, you have become a household name. Like, people know you, people celebrate you. So I want to personally, and I also want our readers to know, what are you? Like, where have you come from? What's your background? You're growing up, your journey as a musician. When you were growing up, did you always want to be a musician? Because I read you pursued dentistry. So all of that, please tell us, how did you start out?
So of course, I did a dental degree just to keep my parents happy, but the intention was always to be a professional musician. Ever since I remember as a child, I've always been 2 things, a musician and an environmentalist. Yeah. I started playing my first musical instrument, I think, even before my first grade, I think when I was about 3 or 4 years old. My father had all of these musical instruments at home. He had a guitar, he had a honky-tonk piano, he had a keyboard, and he was not a musician. But probably he felt that, that if he had these musical instruments around him, he would probably pick up an instrument and start learning it. But he had this massive, massive music collection. So it's the music collection and the musical instruments that got me into music. Because I would just play on these musical instruments, try to express myself through my music. So I did not start off by trying to imitate other pieces of music or try to learn other songs. When I started playing these musical instruments or started teaching myself how to play these musical instruments, I was always playing something new, and I was creating newer melodies and creating something that I was expressing myself through. So that was always a habit of mine, to express myself through music. And at the same time, I was obsessed with my father's music collection. The center of my universe was my music system, and I would constantly listen to these albums and these records, these LPs, these records all day long. I would try to have this sort of competition with myself that I would, in the inlay card, I would look at the credits and I would read the name of, let's say, a guitar player in one particular album, and I would guess who's the same guitar player in another album,
Wow.
And then I would start learning about different musicians, different instrumentalists, different instruments, and different cultures from around the world, because he not only had the pop hits from that particular era, like the Bee Gees and Madonna and Michael Jackson, but he also had a lot of so-called obscure, ethnic, exotic music from around the world, from Southeast Asia, from Japan, from South America, from Europe, Australia, from all of these different places. So I would listen to this music all day long, and a lot of my education actually happened through music. But then, of course, as you mentioned, when we reach our 12th grade, that is when we have to make a very strong decision as to what we want to do for the rest of our life. So my mom and my dad, they knew very well that I'm going to be a musician, but they could not articulate it in their mind that I wanted to be a professional musician, and I didn't want to, study something else. I wanted to do only music, because they felt that, yeah, he'll continue doing music, but it's going to be a hobby, and he'll have another profession. But when I told them that I wanted to be a professional musician, it came as quite a shock to them. And
when was this?
This was in 1999.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was in my 12th. And I'd already started doing commercials for television and radio by then. I already used to hang around in studios. So my professional musical career had already started by then. I was already playing at a band. I was traveling around India, playing in various music competitions and festivals and things like that. So, I, after a lot of heartache and a lot of arguments with my parents, I reached a deal with my father that I would finish off a degree in dental surgery. And once I got that degree, then he would never question me again for the rest of my life, and my life would be my own. So that's what I did. I went to 5 years of college. And of course, during that time, my musical career flourished. And at the end of 5 years, I did not know anything about dentistry, but I got a degree. I very ceremoniously gave that degree to my father. And then instead of doing music in the evenings, I was doing music every single waking moment of my day.
Wow. So your family didn't really have a background other than your father being an aficionado?
Yeah, my father is a doctor. He
Yeah.
still is a doctor, and a very passionate doctor. So he's a third generation doctor. So we've not had a musical background at all in my family.
Wow, that's quite something. This brings me to my next question, because I was researching about you and I read that you're self-taught, and you just mentioned that you would
Correct.
imbibe things on your own. But you also would follow the likes of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, etc. So how did that work? What was your process of training yourself as a musician like? Was it on field, doing it and honing it, or did you really look at some people as idols and followed them?
So in the beginning, I was self-taught. But then later on, what happened is that when I decided that I'm going to take this up as a profession, when I was entering into my dental college, that is when I decided to actually take a formal training in music, so that I could probably overcome a potential handicap that may happen later on in my life. Also, I'm very glad that I did that, because I studied Western classical and Indian classical formally. And I'm very glad that I did that, because it gave me a lot more confidence to collaborate with musicians, especially when it comes to Western classical musicians, because you need to know how to read music, you need to know how to communicate with them in the terms that they understand. So all of that was extremely helpful when it came to the music education. But at the same time, there were a few moments in my life which made me feel that I wanted to be a professional musician. One of them was, I think, when I was in the 5th or 6th grade. I remember listening to a piece of music by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, by Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. It was a piece called Tadhim. It's a 7-minute piece. It was from an album called Night Song, which he had done with Real World Records with Peter Gabriel and Michael Brooks. Yeah. So I was listening to that piece of music, Tadhim, and I remember it was in a Walkman. So it was a cassette player with those sponge headphones. And I was listening to the piece, and I remember I just started getting tears in my eyes while I was listening to it, like halfway through the piece. And I wasn't feeling sad, I wasn't feeling happy. There was no emotions that I was feeling, but it was just too overwhelming for me, the music, that I started getting tears in my eyes. And I felt that, I want to have this kind of an effect on somebody else. And a second moment happened when I was just entering my 11th grade, I think. And then I heard this song by Junoon. That is Sayoni and Yar Bina. I was listening to all of this music. It was an album called Azadi. And I was like, wow, this guy, the singer of the band, that is Ali Azmat, he's got a voice which is similar to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, but yet there are electric guitars, and there is drums, and there is tabla, and there is bass guitar. Then I'm like, these guys are not trying to make a rock song, they're not trying to make a Sufi song, they're not trying to make a pop song or whatever. They're just trying to make a beautiful song, that's all that they're trying to do. Yeah. And whatever instrument goes into it, whatever gets the emotional outcome, they're just expressing themselves through their music. And coming back to my dad's music collection, he had all of this varied music collection from across genres, across countries, geographic locations, cultures, traditions. And I was like, why can't we just bring all of this together, through music, rather than trying to create or slot yourself through a certain genre of music? And that's what started off my next journey, that I'm not a rock musician, I'm not a pop musician, I'm just a musician. Yeah. And whatever it takes to make a good song, whatever instrument, whatever culture, whatever tradition it takes to make a good song, let's just put it into a song.
Absolutely, and I think that reflects in the albums that have gone ahead and won Grammys for India, be it Divine Tides or Winds of Samsara. I mean, both of them have such global influences. They have an Indian touch, they have world music, they have some Western classical. So that very well reflects. But I want to know more about this balance between an artist who wants to create music and who also wants to bring about a change. You as an environmentalist, what brought you to that? I mean, I have seen so many musicians in my career, and not everybody feels that drive of making their music impact the world in such a way where you are voicing yourself about climate change and things that really matter. I remember in 2022 you had done a song with some refugees. I had written about it. So this is something outstanding, Ricky. Please tell us, like, what is it that drives you in that direction?
So as I said, I've always been a musician and an environmentalist. So a very strong environmentalist. I was an environmentalist even before I knew the meaning of what the word is. And throughout my career, my songs would express myself through my environmental nature and things that I felt strongly about, but not all of my music, because in a past life, that is when I started off my career, Used to do a whole lot of commercials for television and radio, did more than 3,500 of them for pretty much every brand and their competitor. So I was very busy doing that, and so I always had some music where I was expressing myself through, and the other music was basically what was briefed to me from a brand or from a, from an advertising agency or a filmmaker. And then what happened was that after doing that for about 13 or 14 years, after doing advertising for that many years, it sort of struck me that these big brands have understood the power of music. So much so that they're ready to spend a few $1,000s on me to create a piece of music for them to sell something, because they're always trying to sell something. And not only that, they're ready to spend a few $1 million to actually air that music on television and radio to sell their product. So they understand that music is a very, very powerful communication tool. And that is when I realized that, there are things that I feel strongly about. There are things that I'm very passionate about. So why can't I communicate that through my music? So not as a sudden stop, but I started creating a whole lot of music on themes that I felt strongly about. And then the second moment happened when I won my first Grammy Award. That is when Prime Minister Modi had invited me for a meeting. And it was supposed to be like a 5-minute photo op type meeting. And I went for the meeting, and it ended up being an hour-long discussion. And in that hour-long discussion, we were discussing about the environment, we were discussing about climate change, because he saw my passion for it, and also he was going to be attending the Paris Climate Change Conference later on that year. And it was going to be the biggest conference ever of nations and of world leaders in the history of our planet, just to understand how do we make this world a better place for our future generations. So we were talking about that. He also told me about what he's going to be delivering in a speech on the main stage for that conference. And that is when he inspired me to follow my passion and to stop everything else. So I remember very clearly leaving his office thinking that I'm going to take his inspiration and his advice very seriously, and I'm going to stop all other forms of music. And the only kind of music that I'm going to make is things that I'm passionate about, because a lot of people end up getting into their passions like music and dance and theater, sculpture, fine arts, whatever. But most of them I've seen are creating art that they themselves do not consume, or they're getting into art forms, or they're getting into art that they're not happy about, and they end up becoming frustrated artists. So I decided that if I'm blessed as being a professional musician and I'm following my dreams and my passion, then within that music I should be doing music itself that I'm passionate about. Right. So I thought that was brilliant advice by our Prime Minister. Took it very seriously, and I've never looked back since then.
Lovely. So what is the kind of impact that you have had as far as environment is concerned? Can you just tell us some instances where you're actually seeing music making an impact in people's lives?
So there are a lot of instances like that. One instance that I can give you is that there is a specific island nation called Kiribati. You've seen a concert of mine, and you've seen me speaking about it. So Kiribati is an island nation in the South Pacific, 21 inhabited islands, used to be 33. Yeah. And they're very low-lying atoll islands. And it is said, rather it is predicted that they're going to be the first country in the world that's going to go completely underwater due to climate change. So while watching this Paris Climate Change Conference, which I just spoke about, where an album of mine was released by the then French President François Hollande and our Prime Minister Modi and the then Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. So they had launched an album of mine. So I was watching that conference very intently. There was one world leader who completely stood out, and that is the president of Kiribati, that is President Anote Tong, 3-term president. Yeah. So he went up on stage, gave the shortest presentation in the whole conference, just about 30 seconds. He said that all you 195 countries present over here, please pass a resolution that ensures that my people of Kiribati stay above the water. And that was very, very powerful. So I went to Kiribati, spent a lot of time over there, made a song with their local population, fell in love with their traditions, fell in love with their culture. And I realized that this is a country that does not take more than they can give back from nature. They are an environmentally conscious society. But the issue is this, that it's one atmosphere. Okay, and our carbon emission and pollution becomes everybody's carbon emission and pollution because of this global temperatures rise, polar ice caps melt. And since Kiribati are low-lying islands, they are the first to go underwater, and they are suffering the consequences of our actions. So I made this song, been performing it ever since then. For the last 7 years, I've been performing it at pretty much every single one of my concerts. Performed it 3 times now at the United Nations General Assembly, performed it at the United Nations headquarters and other places too, to world leaders, to business leaders. And all of a sudden, after all of these performances, Kiribati came into the global consciousness as being a country that is suffering the effects of climate change when they are the least at fault. Yeah. And people started understanding that climate change is not some vague phenomenon that may or may not happen in the future. Climate change is happening right now. There are current victims of climate change. And our actions sitting down over here are affecting our fellow human beings on the other side of the planet. So that, so Kiribati has come into the global consciousness because of, because of music and because of this huge campaign. Then I've done songs on elephants, about human and elephant conflict, which has created a lot of awareness. It's even changed plans when it comes to infrastructure plans. It is, there have been times when, roads have been, there have been plans to construct roads, and they have, because of the consciousness that that song has created, those plans have been reversed simply because it's going to fragment the elephant habitat. People have started understanding that elephants are not animals for joy rides, or animals to be kept in zoos, or animals in zoos, or animals to be, animals just for human entertainment. They are wild animals, They're absolutely wild animals, and they need to be in the wild, and they need to be free. Then I also created a lot of awareness through my music on the tribal farmers. Because tribal farmers, the thing about them is that they practice the purest form of agriculture. They've got indigenous knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation. They grow crops like millet, like especially if you look at places like Odisha, and even in Andhra Pradesh, they grow millet, which is a super crop, and it's a super food simply because it's good for our planet. It is good for our bodies. So, it's the tribal farmers and the efforts that the tribal farmers are doing right now that is bringing back millet into our consciousness and making us understand that it's part of our culture, it's part of our traditions as Indians. So we need to go back to it for our own survival and for our own sustainability and for our own health.
Absolutely. Talking of sustainability, I remember when we had reached out to you for HT's India's Most Stylish.
Correct.
You had mentioned that you don't buy a lot of clothes because you believe in recycling.
Correct.
Such a great example of living by example, So what was the philosophy behind it? When did you really come to this point of realizing that, I don't need to get clothes, even though I'm a celebrity, I don't need to, keep buying new fashion all the time?
So that's the thing about the environment and being passionate about sustainability. The narratives keep changing based on scientific consensus. So, and that's the beauty of following science, that you're constantly learning. There is no paradigm, that we can fixate on today that will work 10 years from now, because scientists are constantly figuring out new things, and we are constantly evolving our thoughts, and we are evolving our behaviors to be more responsible citizens of this planet, not just the country. So when it comes to fast fashion is one of the most polluting industries on our planet from various reasons. One of the main things is that people do not look at the water footprint when it comes to clothes. Even if somebody were to sell you a pure cotton pant, let's say, it could be a jeans, it could be a pure cotton pant. What we don't realize is that the cotton has to be grown somewhere. So it's about approximately 15 plants of cotton that go into making a single cotton pant. So imagine the amount of land usage for growing those 15 cotton plants. Then you have to water them constantly. It takes 150 days to harvest a cotton plant. That's about 5 months. So 5 months of constantly watering that cotton plant. And since it's a non-edible crop, you're tempted to put in a whole lot of pesticides so that the crop survives a pest attack. And it's not, you don't have to eat it. So you can just go on spraying it with pesticides. So you're destroying the groundwater over there. And then you pluck the cotton, and then you send it to a completely different country with a huge carbon footprint because it's sent by ship or by air. It's sent to a completely different country for processing, then a completely different country for manufacturing and weaving, then a completely different country for creating the garments. And then it's sent all over the world for sales. And when it comes to fast fashion, this happens every 2 to 3 weeks. So you can imagine the amount of waste over there. So it said that a single cotton pant has got, forget about the carbon footprint, the impact on the carbon, just the water footprint, a single cotton pant uses 8,000 liters of water. So this whole paradigm of switching off the tap when you, turning off the faucet when you're brushing your teeth, I mean, that's important. Yeah. But if you just buy lesser clothes, you're saving so much of water. Just buying one less jeans is going to save you 8,000 liters of water. So, and it's the same with a t-shirt, a cotton t-shirt which we buy endlessly, we give away for free so many times, that's about 5,000 liters of water. So that is something that we need to be aware of, and that's the reason why I decided that the only solution to this is basically buying good quality clothes and using that for a longer period of time. Because there are a whole lot of brands which call themselves sustainable fashion and sustainable clothing and sustainable cotton. But even though that is better and something's better than nothing, the best way to do it is to buy whatever you want, but use it for a very, very long time and take care of those clothes. And rewear your fashion, because fashion can be fashionable more than once.
Yeah.
As they say, that the earth does not remember what you've worn, but the earth definitely remembers how you treat it.
Yeah.
So that becomes really important. And double down on it. I remember we started a hashtag called Rewear for Earth.
Yeah.
Rewear and the numeric 4 and Earth. And after that, a lot of people have been using it. In fact, even Kate Middleton used it once, where because she's very famous for re-wearing her clothes.
Yeah.
And she does it very fashionably. Like, for example, she'll wear a dress, and then the next time she'll wear the same dress and she'll pull off the sleeves, or she'll wear a belt along with it. And sometimes she's worn the same thing at 3 or 4 occasions.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. Alia Bhatt also has started doing that.
A lot of them.
So I think more and more celebrities need to do this and showcase that it is completely fine, and in fact it is better.
Yeah.
And it is you're showcasing your responsibility towards the planet if you actually rewear your clothes.
Absolutely. How many set of sherwanis do you have?
Total number of clothes, I only have 11.
11.
Total number.
Wow.
Total number is 11 full sets of clothes.
And you've had them for how long?
So all of them cycle around, but each of them I keep them for at least 5 years.
Wow.
So like this jacket, if you look at my Instagram, you'll see it in at least about 10 or 15 different pictures. Same thing with the shirt, you'll see it with different suits, and you'll see it with different different ensembles. So that's the way it is. But when it comes to sherwani, I've had this cream sherwani that that I got last year in 2023 when I won my 3rd Grammy Award, and I've been wearing it ever since then for all my concerts.
Yeah.
So right now, I think I've worn it for over 70 concerts now, and I still wear it because I'm going to continue to wear it till it's unwearable, till it's torn or something like that.
Sure.
And then after that, I'll upcycle it and give it to a thrift shop or something like that.
This takes me to the Delhi concert that you mentioned, where you wore the same sherwani.
Correct.
So a little on the lighter note, I was reading up about you and I realized that you're half Punjabi.
Yes,
So,
my mom is Punjabi.
Yeah. So when I had entered for that concert, I was under the impression that, it would be like a nice sit down
Yeah.
where you would just listen to some really good music, world music, etc. And then in minutes, I found myself standing next to the stage dancing. And that was an event which was attended by the who's who of the United Nations and all the dignitaries from Delhi. So there was a sudden turnaround where, there were dhols and people dancing, and your band just, from classical to a sudden Punjabi transition. Was it the Punjabi at heart that kind of helped you curate that kind of a set?
There was Punjabi folk, there was also Rajasthani folk. My dad comes from Rajasthan. But nevertheless, what I believed is that, when I started off my environmentalism, I was of course one of those outspoken environmentalists who, stop that, stop this is ridiculous, that is bad. Then I started growing a little wiser as I became older, because I started realizing that, especially after I started traveling the length and breadth of India, traveling especially in rural India, understanding rural India problems, I started realizing that there are only 2 kinds of problems in India. You cannot classify them as environmental, health, or whatever. There are only 2 kinds of problems: problem of survival and problem of thriving. So the problem is that environment is always looked upon in a developing nation or a nation from the global south. It's looked upon as a problem of thriving, not as a problem of survival. Because in the global south, problems of survival are other problems, like more immediate problems like poverty, hunger, education, malnutrition, gender inequality, gender violence, sanitation, water. These are more immediate problems. Now, unless you have a holistic approach towards solving all of these problems, nobody's going to buy into the environmental stuff. And these narratives from the West, that the way to solve the climate crisis is consume less of everything. That does not work in rural India, because in rural India, a lot of them do not have enough to consume, first of all. Yeah. So you cannot tell them consume less of everything, or you cannot tell them let's make a better future for our future generations, because you cannot skip their generation. Yeah. Everybody needs to work towards a better standard of living together. And we people in cities live in complete bubbles, where we do not know that these problems exist. So that is the reason why when it comes to my music, I follow a very holistic approach towards problem solving, where we talk about a lot of issues besides, besides just the environment, because everything leads towards my end goal of climate change, which is the biggest existential threat we've ever faced. So when it comes to folk songs, what I do is that I take ancient folk songs from India, and I make modern versions of them, and that's what I perform. And we usually put that in the second half of the concert, so that people can have a good time and they can enjoy, they can get rid of their worries and things like that, because we've got a wealth of folk music in India, which also needs to be conserved. So that is also another form of conservation, because right now we are living in a society where everything is use and throw. You know that we do not believe in reusing anything. If you look at plastics also, plastics was invented as a miracle material because it was non-biodegradable. Now we human beings have decided that a non-biodegradable material has become reusable, which makes absolutely no sense. So we're just reusing everything and we're throwing away everything. It's same thing is happening to our culture, same thing is happening to our heritage and our traditions, especially when it comes to the art forms. So that is why this is my endeavor of conserving our art forms by creating modern versions of our folk tunes and working with tribal artists, performing them at my concerts, because this eventually will help in conserving our environment also.
Sure. And this takes me to my next question. So as I see you as a global musician who is, you know, of course, as I said at the beginning, that you have put India on a global map, like so many legends, you know, and we are lucky that, you know, we can have you and we can talk to you. So, but Ricky, I remember that when you started out, you would sell more albums in the US.
Yeah.
And because you didn't really believe in the kind of culture that existed in India, it was
correct.
Yeah, the albums would not sell.
Yeah.
But now there's a paradigm shift. Things are so different now with the DSPs thriving,
Yeah.
the likes of Spotify calling the shots. So how have things changed for independent musicians? Because there's no bigger independent musician than you. You've always done independent music.
So the thing is that there is a paradigm shift happening, as you're saying, but it's probably not happening quick enough. Yeah. As you correctly mentioned, in the beginning of my career, in fact, the first 16 of my albums were not even released in India.
Yeah.
So the first album that got me noticed was the one which won the Grammy Award.
Divine.
And the best part is that all those albums were primarily Indian. Now, very early on in my career, and I say this in a lot of my talks and when I'm talking to people, that in very early on in my career, one person who inspired me a lot by the way that he handled his career was Pandit Ravi Shankar. So Pandit Ravi Shankar, he moved abroad, he moved to the Bay Area, and he was creating his music over there, and his music was pure Indian classical music. And I remember when I was very young, I'd watched a whole lot of Bollywood concerts in America, even in the UK and in Europe, and I used to enjoy them. And these Bollywood musicians were able to fill up complete stadiums, fill up complete auditoriums with audiences, packed halls. But the only people who would show up for those concerts were people from the Indian diaspora, nobody from outside. Because whatever we may say and do, however we may console ourselves, with the exception of very, very few songs, Bollywood has not broken cultural barriers. Bollywood has remained within Bollywood. And this is very, very evident by if you go to any Bollywood concert anywhere in the world, or if you see the number of Bollywood films that have won awards, even though we are the biggest manufacturer of films in the world, just a handful. You can count them on your fingers as to how many Bollywood films have won awards. Not a single Bollywood film has ever won a Grammy Award. You know, that's the way it is, you know, that they've not broken cultural barriers. Very rarely does a Bollywood film get into charts. Not a single Bollywood song has ever got into a Billboard chart. You know, so that's the way it is. Whereas the people who have actually broken cultural barriers are the classical musicians. Classical musicians have time and again come in the Billboard charts. Classical musicians have time and again won Grammy Awards. They've, you know, and coming back to Pandit Ravi Shankar, I'd gone to this Pandit Ravi Shankar concert in the Bay Area. And what was shocking for me was that the audience inside the theater was very representative of the audience of the city itself. Yeah. So the number of, like for example, the city had maybe an 80% Caucasian population. There was 80% Caucasian sitting inside, 5% Asian population, 5% Asians inside, 5% African American, 5% African American inside. So, and Pandit Ravi Shankar was not playing an electric guitar. He was not playing rock music. He was not playing heavy metal music. He was not playing hip hop music. What he was doing was he was playing pure Indian classical music, and the purest form possible. And the audience was absolutely enjoying it, and this audience was never before exposed to this kind of music, but he was drawing these audiences in. So he was a true ambassador of Indian culture, and he had truly broken cultural barriers. And that's what inspired me to, that I realized that, all right, you know, you can do whatever you want. You know, you can do whatever kind of music you want. What you have to do is that you have to find your audience. And that's what Pandit Ravi Shankar did. He found his audience outside of India and he catered to that audience. Of course, he had an audience inside India also. But in India today, we are talking about this paradigm shift that is happening in India. When it comes to our cultural forms of music, in India, I challenge you this. You walk on the street and you ask anybody to name one album of Pandit Ravi Shankar. Nobody can name an album. You ask them to name one song, and he's done over 60 albums. You go onto his Wikipedia page, it's close to 70 albums that he's actually created. In India, nobody can name an album. In fact, you'll have better luck on the streets of San Francisco or New Jersey of people naming albums of his, but you will probably find no luck in India. And that needs to change, I feel. So that's what needs to happen, and that's when I realized that there are two forms of music that one can create. One is a one-size-fits-all approach, which is basically mainstream music that Bollywood creates, and which I love listening to, but I'll probably not create, but I love listening to. So one is, of course, the mainstream form of music where you're creating music for a very wide demographic across age groups, across India, across language barriers and things like that. So that a lot of people appreciate it and it gets a mass following, and you have to follow current trends and all of that stuff. Then the second kind of music is basically where you're creating music just for yourself and music that you love and music that you want to create. There the struggle becomes you have to find that audience who agrees with you. And it's going to be a niche audience, and you cannot complain that, oh, you know, why do I not have 10 million followers on Instagram, or why do I not have, you know, like 300 million views on YouTube? No, you're never going to get that number of views, but you're going to get that loyal audience who's going to absolutely appreciate your music, and you get the benefit that you're getting to make music that you yourself love. So you're very satisfied with your music. So there is a trade-off over there, but one has to figure out what do you want to do in your life.
Right. So this brings me to an interesting question actually. So we are talking about classical music. There's a lot of young bands these days, you know, who have considered it a mission. Actually, they have customized themselves just to promote independent Indian classical music.
Yes.
Yeah. They are giving it a very fresh approach that can, you know, connect with the youth.
Correct.
And they are slowly transitioning into, say, popular space as well by doing film music, OTT soundtracks, etc. Now, for somebody like you who has already become such a big name, you know, connecting the globe to India and also a household name now, if an opportunity presents itself where you have to, if you are asked to compose for a film that pretty much fits in the scheme of things as far as your sensibilities are concerned, would you want to take it up?
No, of course, if it's a film which has got a social message at its heart, or the song itself promotes a social message, or it promotes something about conservation, whether it's Indian culture or traditions, or it's in a thumri style or something like that, that is something that I would absolutely love to take up. So the question for me is that, do I want to be extremely well known for songs that do not define me as a person, as an artist, or do I want to be lesser known for songs that define me as an artist? So I chose that path, you know, that I'd rather be lesser known, but songs that define me. Because if you look at an artist like, let's say a person like Vincent van Gogh or Picasso, I cannot imagine them that when they are making a new piece of art, they're going to all the neighboring art galleries and saying, okay, what is everybody doing? Let's do something that is in trend, or let's do something that is amazing, or whatever, that everybody is loving. They would not do that. They would dig deep into their soul and create a piece of music that, you know, that defines them. And if I wanted to know more about what Vincent van Gogh was as a person, I'd probably not read a book about him. I'd probably look at all his art, and I would try to decipher as to what kind of a person he was, like a person who was very tormented, or a person who was very psychedelic in his vision, and he used to think very differently. So I'll deduce all of that, you know, or I'll deduce his personality from, you know, his art. So that's what I'm hoping that would happen in my career. But of course, there's a trade-off. Because the Bollywood composers are, of course, extremely popular. They are able to do very, very large concerts. They're able to do all of that. But for me, it's a trade-off.
What if you get in that space, because it's agreed that Bollywood music is very massy. And the mission that you have should also reach the masses. So don't you think that will align?
Obviously that will align, but the people who make those kind of films never approach me for some reason.
They might now after this interview.
No, but if somebody approaches me and the film has got a strong social message, I will just jump right into it.
But
in fact, I met Nandita Das just about 3 days ago. That was a beautiful conversation we had. We met each other in Jaipur. It was just a chance meeting. She and I were at the same event. And we just ended up chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting, and then we were like wondering why aren't we working with each other, you know? And then she told me that she's starting a new film, so fingers crossed that she calls me.
Lovely. Wow. See,
Yeah.
that can be a beginning.
Yeah.
What do you think about Bollywood music in general, the way it is right now? Hindi film music, that's what I like to call it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love Hindi film music. As I told you, I'm huge fans of Vishal-Sheykhar. Yeah, my favorites are Salim-Sulaiman.
Yeah.
Absolutely love them. I think the kind of music that they've made across the decades, working with other composers and their own compositions, especially their own compositions, has been absolutely amazing. Had the opportunity to even collaborate with them multiple times. They're like brothers to me. Then Shankar-Ehsaan-Loy.
Yeah.
Shankar Mahadevan is another person who I absolutely deeply admire. He's a person who is a very good example of a person who's managed to strike a balance between a whole lot of things. Because I remember when he started off in the Hindi film music industry, he was also playing with a Swedish band called Minta.
Yes.
And they were absolutely amazing. And I was wondering that when I was listening to Minta, I was like, how does he find the time to do both of these things, you know? And Minta was quite a successful band in Europe. Everybody in Europe knew about Minta. And then, of course, with Shakti, now he's won a Grammy Award, and he constantly does his classical music concerts. I've seen 2 concerts of his with Louis Banks where he's done a complete jazz set. So he does this whole variety of music. So that's why I'm a huge fan of his, and collaborated with him too multiple times. And it's always been a very enjoyable experience collaborating with him. Many, many other people who I'm hoping to collaborate with. Friends with Arman Malik, hoping to collaborate with him.
Lovely.
So yeah.
With 3 Grammys in your kitty, it's not easy. I mean, it's a feat like very few people have kind of achieved. Is it a pressure as an artist? Once you reach a certain pedestal, does it work as an encouragement or more as a pressure that you have to keep delivering and keep coming up with work that can live up to the expectation of your past projects?
Of course, like, but the way that I look at awards is completely different. The way that I look at awards is that, let's say that, again, like, you know, there are 2 ways to look at awards. One is with vanity. Oh, I won this award and this is the end goal, and, you know, I'm better than everybody else. But that's not the correct way to look at awards. The second way to look at awards is that, you know, that you've been given this platform, especially for me, since all of my music has got a message, and this message I want to reach further and wider as much as possible. The thing is that for me, the thing is that once I win this award, or when I win any award, it's about I've been given this platform. Now, what am I going to do with this platform? Because before I won this award, there were few people who would take me seriously, few people who would not take me seriously. Now, after I won this award, a lot more people are taking me seriously. So how do I spread this message further and wider? How do I spread this music further and wider? How do I collaborate with the artists that I've always wanted to collaborate with to create better music and to learn from them? So that's the idea. So for me, an award is not about pressure, even though it may seem like that way. It's all about pressure to pressure in a more vanity sense, but it's more about pressure that now that I won this award, I need to make use of it. You know, like I need to ensure I've been given this gift, I've been given this platform. Like, how do I utilize it in the best possible way?
Nice. I would like to close this with just trying to understand the kind of, is there a dream project that you want to work on, something that is still in your head but you're still waiting for it to translate? It could be for a cause, it could be in a certain space, a certain genre. You mentioned thumri, so I was very curious.
Yeah, I've done a thumri album recently. It is an album, thumri bandish kind of styled electronica album with an artist called Abby V.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's an album called Aram. It did quite well, the album. So quite proud of that album. But yeah, the dream project, now that we've had this conversation, I think a dream project of mine would be something that has got a social cause that would go mainstream, and maybe even be part of a movie. So that's something that I would love to do. You know, something that is part of a movie, something that creates awareness on a certain social issue, or something that celebrates something about society, but at the same time, you know, is true to its heart. It's not like a mainstream Bollywood film with a little bit of a social message thrown in or sprinkled in.
Yeah.
Something that at its heart is very honestly about a very strong social cause. I would love to be a part of that project.
If not a musician, what would you be?
I think just a musician, that's it. There
Do you
is
have
no second
filmmaking
thought.
streak in you? Maybe you could make
I
a film
love
like
watching
that.
movies, and I love deciphering movies. I'm quite an encyclopedia when it comes to movies. You name the movie, I will tell you the director, I will tell you, I'll tell you what awards it's won, everything. Or you name a director, I'll name you their entire chronology of films. So I'm very, very good at that. So I'm a huge appreciator of cinema, But cinema is something that I will never get into because I believe in just staying with whatever I have expertise in, which is basically music. So I'm always going to stay in music, but I will continue to always appreciate movies.
What is your music consumption pattern in a day? How much music do you listen to? How much time do you spend?
So I listen to a lot of music when I'm on planes.
Yeah.
So when I'm on planes, I listen to a lot of music. I download a lot of music on Spotify and I listen to music. And at the same time, I also work on music on planes. So I've got a mini, laptop set up with headphones and I work on music. So I do both. I listen to music and I work on music. Even while I'm sleeping, when I'm going to sleep, I end up listening to music. So I listen to a lot of music, and my consumption genres is very, very varied because it depends upon my mood. Everybody's got a different way to relax themselves. Like a lot of people say that we listen to very calming and soothing music to relax themselves. For me, I'm a metalhead. I listen to a lot of heavy metal and I find that very relaxing. In cars, I love listening to bands like Metallica, Pantera, Cannibal Corpse, and Sepultura, Rammstein. These are the bands that I love listening to in the car and even on headphones. So basically that. So I listen to a variety of music, and at the same time I listen to music a lot.
But for somebody who consumes so much of Western genres, how do you hone yourself in Indian space, like for genres like thumri, ghazal, etc.? What is your learning ground there?
I listen to a lot of Indian music too. Yeah, so it's a proper balance. I just name these because they seem to be out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
But I listen to a lot of Indian music, a lot of classical Indian musicians, and of course I go to a lot of concerts. Whenever I'm in town in Bangalore or in Bombay or wherever I am in, I always look at listings to see what concerts are going on in the city. And if I'm free in the evening, I always end up at a concert. So I watch a lot of concerts. So in fact, I do a lot of concerts because like last year I did about 77 concerts in 2023. But I would say that I actually watch an equal number of concerts.
Right.
So, and when I go to when I perform at music festivals, I end up actually going earlier, or I end up staying later, and and staying for an extra day so that I can watch the rest of the bands and rest of the musicians perform. So I watch a lot of performances and music.
Orchestration and instruments have been very integral to the kind of music you do. I was reading that Winds of Samsara had 50 instruments and 120 instrumentalists. Similarly, last year we had written about the 100 instruments, the national anthem version that you did with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. So what is it with this love for instruments? Why is it really integral to the kind of music you do?
So it's not about having a lot of instruments. It's just that sometimes when I'm composing a piece of music or I'm creating or arranging a piece of music, it just happens that to create the intended output and create the emotional impact, I sometimes fill it up with instruments, because I've also done songs where it's just voice and one piano. I've also done those kind of songs. Or recently I just finished off a song which is 100% a cappella, where it's just voices and zero instruments. So I do a variety of things. But then when it comes to the national anthem, I think we spoke about it. What was the reason why I did the symphony orchestra? Because I've worked with symphony orchestras all over the world, whether it is multiple symphony orchestras in USA, Europe, in the UK. So every time I conduct or every time I work with the symphony orchestra, the first thing that comes to my mind is that there are so many varied instruments, and every instrument, it's got its own unique personality. Like a violin, it's got its own unique personality. A harp, it's got its own unique personality, and both of them are not trying to be each other.
Yeah.
And percussion instruments like timpanis, they're so loud and they've got its own unique personality. But so nobody's trying to be each other. Everybody is maintaining their own unique personality, every instrument. But yet when they play together in an orchestra, they play as one. So that is very representative of a country like India, where a country like India is almost like the whole of Europe twice is in India, with that many languages, that many different dialects, that many culinary preferences, that many religions, that many philosophical ideologies and things like that, But so everybody, so basically this whole concept of oneness that comes from Buddhism and it comes from Hinduism, and even Christianity has got the concept of oneness. It never has meant everybody has to be uniform and everybody has to be the same. Oneness has always meant that everybody maintain your own unique personalities and unique ideologies and thoughts and philosophies, but at the same time work together as one.
In harmony.
And that's what harmony is all about, because harmony is not about everybody plays a C note, It's about one person plays C, one person plays E, another person plays G, and then
it's a
and somehow all of them come together as one,
and
it sounds beautiful as one. So that is the reason why like working with large ensembles, and in this case for the national anthem, that's why I wanted to work with the best orchestra in the world, that is the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and bring together 100 musicians to showcase that how a diverse range of instruments with different music, ethnomusicologies and different, because at the end of the day, all those orchestral instruments do not come from one place.
Yeah.
They all came from different places, and and somehow they all came together in an orchestra because over the years it evolved that all these instruments somehow work with each other quite well. So that is what. So bringing all those instruments and showing a proper visual and audio representation of what India is, that diverse communities, diverse people, diverse ideologies, but somehow working together as one.
Lovely. Please tell us about the album that you're working on. What can we expect from you?
There are multiple things that I'm working on right now. So I'm working on another album, or rather finishing off another album with Stuart Copeland.
Okay, lovely.
So that album is an orchestral album. We recorded again at Abbey Road Studios in London. And right now I'm working on the post-production. In January, we spent 5 days and we recorded the album. So now I'm working on crafting the album and producing the album. So the album should be ready, I think in about a month's time, and it should release by the end of this year. Then I'm also working on another mindfulness album. So that album also should release in the next 2 to 3 months. And working on various other singles, yeah. So working on quite a lot of music.
Great, Ricky. Thank you so much. It's been one of my most insightful interviews, but I actually got to learn so much that I forgot my next question. But thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been an honor, and all the very best. And thank you for doing so much for music and for the world at large.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.